You're probably working harder right now than you were 5 years ago. You're putting in the hours, grinding through the emails, maybe even picking up a side hustle because some guy on the internet in a rented Lambo told you that sleep is for the weak. You are doing everything right. And yet somehow, the math just isn't mathing, is it? You look at your bank account at the end of the month. You look at the price of rent, the price of a decent steak, or, heaven forbid, the price of a starter home, and you realize you are running on a treadmill that is slowly but surely accelerating. No matter how fast you sprint, you are losing ground. Most people in this situation do one of two things. They either blame themselves, thinking they just need to hustle harder, or they blame some vague concept of corporate greed. But the reality is far colder, far more mechanical, and honestly, a little insulting once you finally see it. There is an invisible force dictating the cost of your life, the security of your job, and the exact value of the money sitting in your pocket. It's controlled by a small, unelected group of people sitting in a sterile room, turning a metaphorical dial. And I need you to understand right now, this system was not designed to protect you. It was designed to protect the system itself. Today, we are going to strip away the academic garbage. Forget the Wall Street jargon. Forget quantitative easing and basis points. I want to explain exactly how the game is rigged, using a picture so simple you'll never be able to unsee it. Imagine the global economy isn't a complex web of algorithms and trade agreements. Imagine it instead as a massive, endless agricultural field. In this field, there are millions of plants. You have massive ancient oak trees. These are your trillion-dollar tech monopolies and legacy banks. You have decent-sized apple trees, steady, mid-sized businesses. And then you have millions of tiny little sprouts, startups, local shops, and ordinary people like you and me, just trying to grow our roots and survive. For anything in this field to grow, it requires one thing: water. In our world, water is money. It is liquidity. It is the lifeblood that allows businesses to hire, consumers to buy, and the whole charade to keep spinning. But here is the catch. This field does not rely on natural rainfall. It hasn't for a very long time. The entire ecosystem is hooked up to a colossal artificial irrigation system. At the center of this field is the master pump. This is the central bank. The Federal Reserve, the Bank of England, the ECB, pick your poison. They are the operators of the pump. And the most terrifying weapon they have at their disposal is a single, heavy iron pressure valve. That valve represents interest rates. The interest rate is nothing more than the cost of borrowing water. It is the price of money. When the operators want to make the field grow, they open the valve. Water becomes cheap, abundant, and everywhere. When they want to choke the field out, they tighten the valve. Water becomes scarce and incredibly expensive. This single mechanical movement dictates the rise and fall of empires, the creation of generational wealth, and whether or not you will get laid off next Tuesday. So let's talk about how this cycle actually plays out, because you have lived through it, even if you didn't know what you were looking at. It always starts with a panic. A crisis hits. Maybe it's a housing collapse. Maybe it's a global health emergency. Or maybe the economy is just stalling out. The field starts to look a little dry. People get scared, they stop spending money, businesses stop hiring, and the sprouts start to wither. The guys at the central bank look out the window at this dying field, and they panic. They know that if the field dies completely, the system collapses and they lose their power. So they run to the master pump, grab the valve, and they crank it wide open. They drop interest rates to zero. By dropping rates to zero, they are essentially getting on a loudspeaker and announcing to the world, "Water is free, come and get it, take as much as you want." And what happens next is pure, unadulterated chaos. A massive rush of cheap liquidity floods the system. The commercial banks act as the distribution pipes, taking this free money from the central bank and spraying it everywhere. They practically beg people to take mortgages. They throw billions at corporations. Suddenly, the field is absolutely soaking wet, and for a brief, euphoric moment, it feels incredible. This is the era of the economic boom. With so much cheap water sloshing around, everything grows at a terrifying speed. Because money is so cheap to borrow, businesses expand recklessly. Consumers feel wealthy because the value of their house just shot up 30% for no logical reason, so they start buying cars on credit and remodeling their kitchens. During this phase, everybody thinks they are a financial genius. Have you noticed that? When the water is free, even the most useless parasitic weed looks like a mighty oak. You see companies with zero revenue, no product, and a laughable business model getting valued at $2 billion. You see people quitting their perfectly good jobs to day trade imaginary internet coins or buy JPEGs of cartoon apes, convinced they have hacked the matrix. They haven't hacked anything. They are just floating on surface water. When there is a flood, even the trash rises to the top. It is a period of collective delusion fueled by artificial liquidity, but nature and mathematics always collects its debts. You cannot flood a field forever. If the central bank leaves that valve open for too long, the soil becomes toxic. The sheer volume of money circulating in the system has grown exponentially, but the actual physical goods and services, the real value in the world, hasn't changed much. Think about it. If you suddenly give everyone in your city $1 million, the city doesn't become 1 million times wealthier. There are still the same number of houses, the same number of steaks at the butcher, the same number of cars on the lot. The only thing that changes is the price. Welcome to inflation. At first, the guys at the pump will try to gaslight you. They'll go on TV and say, "Don't worry, the water isn't that deep. The inflation is transitory. It'll pass." But it doesn't pass. The water level keeps rising, and it starts rotting the roots of the economy. Too much money is now violently chasing too few goods. The purchasing power of the dollars in your wallet is being actively destroyed, minute by minute. You notice it at the grocery store. You notice it at the gas pump. Suddenly, the businesses realize their raw materials cost more, so they raise prices. Workers realize they can no longer afford to feed their kids, so they demand higher wages. The businesses raise prices again to cover the new wages. It becomes a death spiral. And who gets hurt the most? Not the giant oak trees. They have deep roots and massive cash reserves. The people who get slaughtered are the sprouts, the working class, the middle class, the people who don't own appreciating assets, the people whose wages will never, ever keep up with the speed at which their money is losing value. When the inflation gets so bad that people are ready to riot, the central bank finally realizes the party is over. If they don't act, the currency itself will become worthless. So, they walk back into that sterile room. They walk up to the master pump, and with cold, mechanical precision, they start violently cranking the valve shut. They raise interest rates. They don't just do it a little bit, they hike them up, month after month, mercilessly. The cost of borrowing water skyrockets overnight. The free money faucet is completely turned off. The immediate shock to the ecosystem is brutal. It is the financial equivalent of a heart attack. For all those plants that grew accustomed to unlimited free water, the sudden drought is a death sentence. Mortgage rates double. Suddenly, nobody can afford to buy a house, so the housing market freezes. Corporations that were relying on cheap debt to pay their bills suddenly find their interest payments are bleeding them dry. The only way they can survive is to hack off branches. They cancel projects, they freeze hiring, and yes, they lay off thousands and thousands of workers. Investors wake up from their speculative hangover. They look at all the garbage they invested in, the crypto, the hyped-up tech startups with no profits, and they panic. They pull their money out and run to the safety of government bonds. Because why risk your capital on a startup when the government is paying you 5% just to sit on your hands? The liquidity completely drains from the field. The ground cracks. We enter a recession. And this is where we reach the ultimate twist. This is the part that makes people furious, but you need to hear it if you ever want to stop being a victim of this cycle. A recession is not a mistake. It is not an accident. It is a highly engineered, fully intentional feature of the system. The central bank knows that raising rates will cause unemployment. They know it will bankrupt businesses. They know it will cause immense human suffering. But they do it anyway because a recession is a controlled burn. Remember all those useless weeds and zombie companies that sprouted up during the flood? The ones that didn't actually produce anything of value, but survived just by drinking the free surface water? The system needs them to die. If a forest never has a fire, the dead wood piles up until the whole thing becomes a tinderbox that will burn the entire ecosystem to ash. The economic drought is the fire. It is designed to ruthlessly slaughter the inefficient, the reckless, and the weak. When those zombie companies go bankrupt, their office space becomes vacant, driving down rent. Their employees get laid off, driving down the cost of labor for the companies that actually survived. It is a brutal, heartless cleansing process designed to reset the board so the game can start all over again. So, where the hell does that leave you? You are a single plant in a field controlled by giants with a water valve. You cannot control the pump. You cannot vote the pump operators out of office. If you spend your time crying about how unfair the system is, you will dry up and blow away with the rest of the weeds. Your only defense, your only mandate for survival, is how you build your root system. When the valve is wide open and the water is flowing, the biggest mistake you can make is living like a weed. It is intoxicating to take on cheap consumer debt, to buy a car you can't afford, to finance a lifestyle that looks great on Instagram but is backed by absolutely nothing. Weeds grow fast, but their roots are barely scratching the surface. The millisecond the water shuts off, they die. You have to build the root system of an oak. That means, number one, stop playing with consumer debt. In a high-interest environment, carrying credit card debt is like voluntarily bleeding out. You are paying the central bank's penalty for the rest of the market's greed. Cut it out. Number two, recognize that paper wealth is an illusion. During the boom, people love to brag about their net worth based on the inflated price of their house or their stock portfolio. But paper wealth evaporates. What keeps you alive in a drought is cash flow. Real, tangible, incoming cash. You need a reservoir, an emergency fund, that is so deep the drought can't touch it. And finally, the most important thing you can possibly do: become economically undeniable. During a recession, when money is tight, companies look for the fat to trim. If your job is just sending emails, organizing meetings, or riding the coattails of a booming market, you are the fat. You are surface moss. You need to develop high-income, irreplaceable skills. You need to know how to build the infrastructure, manage the data, write the code, or close the sales that actually keep the lights on. When you possess a skill that directly solves a painful problem or generates revenue, your roots go past the topsoil. You tap into the deep, subterranean aquifers of the economy. You stop being an expense, and you become a core necessity. The central bank is going to keep turning that dial. They will flood the field, and they will burn it down, over and over again until the end of time. Stop expecting the water to always be there. Stop trusting the pump. Dig deeper. Build a foundation that can survive the fire, and let the weeds burn.